JBL Charge 5, speaker I quite like. Unusual for JBL these days. Now, any speaker that says JBL is going to get a lot of interest, and there has been a lot of interest, of course, in the JBL Charge 5. When I got this out of the box, on my first listen, I thought, that sounds a load of rubbish. And every time I've listened to it since, it's improved and improved to my ears. I do think there's some breaking in that you can do with this speaker. Bear in mind, my testing does include maximum volume, so it's been played maximum volume for its full 4 hours that I got out of this speaker. And I've been doing a lot of other loud testing. So it's had some serious break-in. I think it's lost some of its harshness, and I think it has improved overall. Is it the greatest speaker of all time? No. Is it my pound for pound world champion? No. Does it have a place? Absolutely. Its problem, of course, is it's £160. Of course, it's going to be the cheapest on the table here. Oh, no, it's not going to be the cheapest. It's going to be the most expensive. And indeed, why am I comparing it to speakers that are clearly a hell of a lot bigger? You could say David versus Goliath. And the reason I'm doing it is, A, you're asking me to. I just did the Sony XB43 and the Soundcore Motion Plus up against the JBL Charge 5. And you could think of these as the big brothers to those speakers. And if they are speakers you're asking, I don't know why, you'd think it's the JBL Extremely Price 3 that should be up against these speakers. You asked, I am delivering. Now, £160. That makes it the most expensive speaker on this table. This morning, when I'm checking, it's £149 for the Sony XB43. And I know you're getting deals out there even cheaper than that, making it quite an interesting speaker at the price. 80 quid. £80 for the Soundcore Motion Boom. It's no secret, it's my pound for pound world champion. But they are bigger speakers. Is this a fair test? Well, it is if they're asking £160. They're not alone. The Denon 250PT speaker I quite like, probably maybe the best travel speaker. It's also up around 160 quid. So maybe that should have been the comparison. But you've asked for this one. I will do this one. Can it justify its price? One thing I'm surprised about with JBL is, you know, they do like, they go, oh, you get it in red, you get it in green, and blue, camouflage, all the colours of the rainbow. But what they're not doing yet is our LEDs, our illumination. This is currently on rave. I can go raving with my LEDs. No lights. This has surprised me. JBL, being someone who's into design, maybe a little bit before the sound, no lights. So can we look forward to that at some point in the future? But £160, no LEDs. I bet that alone will be a deal breaker for some people. Now, Soundcore Motion Boom. It's a 30-watt speaker. On paper, this is a 40-watt speaker. 30 watts for the woofer, 10 watts for the tweeter. So you're thinking, well, you know, all right, it's smaller, but come on, the amps are gonna get, it's a bit more powerful. Could that make the difference? So 30 watts, 40 watts. Sony very shy with their specs these days, except when it comes to frequency response, where for every speaker they say 20 hertz to 20 kilohertz. Of course, they don't specify plus or minus whatever. We do like to see plus or minus 3 decibels. So absolutely meaningless. Will you hear this speaker down to 20 hertz? No. Will you hear any of their Bluetooth speakers down to 20 hertz? No, not outside of playing a single 20 hertz test tone and sticking the speaker at maximum volume, and then at home you're playing it through your speakers, maximum volume, and then you hear, oh, there's a bit of a tone, it plays down to 20 hertz. No, that does not play down to 20 hertz, and neither does the XB43. It's an absolute joke. So 80 quid, 160 quid, 150 quid. Batteries, 37 watt hours is the biggest battery on the Soundcore Motion Boom. XB43, 36 watt hours, and you know, for its size, it's a reasonable battery, 27 watt hours. You're still asking, well, what's got an auxiliary input? Well, amazingly, the Sony XB43, only speaker on this table with an auxiliary input. It's so rare these days. Again, that alone will be a reason for some people to buy the Sony XB43. But, oh, blimey, it looks big. And do you know what? Oh, you can do some weightlifting with that. It's 3 kilos. I lift that up and, oh, blimey. It's only a little thing. Only a little, that's less than a kilo. 980 grams. 1.5 kilos, so, which is right bang in between the two speakers. Is it? No, it's not actually. No, anyway, 1.5 kilos for the Soundcore Motion Boom, but 3 kilos. That's a hefty speaker, and it's going to have to go some to justify that weight. Now, if you're never going to use it as a travel speaker, that's fine. It will just sit on a table. Yes, they are all IPX7, but not just that. We're dustproof on the Sony XB43, and we are dustproof on the JBL Charge 5. We are not dustproof on the Motion Boom. We got tweeters in all of these speakers, except, no, not the JBL, except my pound for pound world champion. We can only dream. Add tweeters to this speaker, or what would have happened? But do you know what? A lot of these speakers are coming now with tweeters, but either the crossover's not well implemented, or they're using very cheap tweeters just so they can say it's got tweeters. And I did a test of this against my Sony XB40, and quite honestly, the Sony XB40 can really hold its own against the XB43. And you've got to ask yourself, does it really matter, separate tweeters, if they're not making the most of those tweeters? I will say for the Sony XB43, it's the best here for latency. It's something you ask about. Motion Boom, I have to say, awful latency. You're going to get lip sync issues, you know, if you're YouTubing or something. Okay, 125 milliseconds, you'll see a little bit, but it's probably doable. But 80 milliseconds is about as high as I like to see it for, you know, usable streaming. So that's good. Bluetooth latency is good on the XB43. In terms of battery, Sony do their battery management. You're going to like it or love it, depending on, do you want it to go loud or do you want it to go long? Look, technically, I could run this on maximum volume, 6 hours and 40 minutes, and you're thinking, blimey, that's really good going, but they drop the volume, drop the volume, drop the volume. So the volume at the beginning is not the volume at the end, and there is quite a bit of a difference. And if you want maximum volume, 2 hours and 20 minutes, and then it will start dropping the volume. But 3 hours, 48 minutes, proper maximum volume. 5 hours, 51 minutes on the Motion Boom, which we know has great bass. So that is some going, and it's holding its volume. So how do they sound? I'm going to go through the volume steps. 40% volume, around 40% volume. I am volume matching them. My comparison. What do I like most about the JBL Charge 5? I like the way it plays at low volume. It's still really dynamic. You still get the sense of the bass and the clarity. This is a very lean, clear sounding speaker. Remember, it's mono, one woofer, one tweeter. It's going to be mono. You do have a narrow soundstage. However, at low volumes, for me, that's where it excels. So maybe I could say at 40%, around 40%, 50% volume, to me, that's probably the winner, because I'm still getting a deep, well, not deep, but it's a nice immersive sound. Look, on paper, there's only one speaker here that does deep bass. In fact, in this testing, deep bass 30 to 65 hertz, 5 decibels up on both of these speakers. I will say the Sony XB43, I've seen it before, you don't really get the benefit of that big set of the bigger drivers till you go to the bigger volumes. Even like on this, there's not, on this particular test, minus 25, minus 25, it's the same deep bass as on the JBL Charge 5. And same for mid bass, minus 21, it's the same mid bass. And indeed, upper bass stronger on the JBL Charge 5 at these matched volumes. And I saw it the same when I did it against the Sony XB33. If you only play it low to moderate volumes, the Sony XB33 is still a match with the Sony XB43, crazy as it seems. However, it's a big speaker and you get big drivers. And what you do get with this speaker is a big sound. You do get a big sound stage, but you won't get the bass, certainly at these volumes, that you may be expecting by holding it in your hand. I will say, and point it out again, I'm using my custom settings, normally done around 70% volume, where I do most of my real world listening. So when you put custom settings into a speaker that's already got some bass adjustment, it's going to sound a bit muddy. The bass is there, you can't argue with the bass, and if that's all you want, still a winner. But against an ultra, I would say an ultra clear sounding speaker at these volumes, it does sound muddy. However, still a stereo sound, and that's always going to be a narrow sound with its mono nature, and of course its small size. So if I was at school, I would say on the Sony XB43 report, it's doing okay, but must do better, must apply itself more. For its capabilities, it's doing really well, the JBL Charge 5, and the Motion Boom has potential. Would like to hear a bit more. So let's hear a bit more. Let's go to around 60% volume, around 65% volume.
Like fading pictures, you are falling out of frame. We have only old memories, but I love you just the same. Same, 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 same,
Fantastic clarity on the JBL Charge 5. We've got fantastic deep bass on the Motion Boom. And the Sony XB43, while I think it sounds better at these volumes than it does at the lower volumes, it has neither the deep bass of the Motion Boom, and it has not the clarity of the JBL Charge 5. You may be asking yourself, why does it exist? Well, it is a very safe sound. And it's still an enjoyable sound, obviously outside of an AB, and you're only listening to that. It does sound enjoyable, but very safe. It's never going to sound fantastic, in my opinion. It's never going to do things to music you've never heard it sound that way before. It's never going to sound awful, but what you do get is a big sound. that probably as its greatest asset. It's a big sounding speaker, especially you go up then against the JBL Charge 5 and you realise how narrow the JBL Charge 5 is and how big the soundstage is on the Sony XB43. Still got the sense of being a little bit muffled. Of course, you can EQ the hell out of it if you wanted to get that clarity. But I'm using one EQ, keeping life simple, and that's going to be for all volume steps. That's the way I do it. So, still has that obvious deep bass. It's on a different level to these other two speakers. I hope you're playing back via something that can play down to 30, 40 hertz in a meaningful way, because if you don't, you are not going to hear what you're going to hear in person when you play this speaker. It's all about that deep bass, but it's still enjoyable. But when it's up against, quite clear, because I've pushed the mids to make up for the lack of mids, to be fair, on the XB43, and because we've got ultra clear highs on the JBL Charge 5, it's going to make it sound even that more muffled. It's not really muffled. It's just in an A-B, you get a sense of that. So we're going to go to, for me, real world volumes, where they're all going to sound the most dynamic, where they start limiting, where you're probably getting the most bass anyway along the volume steps, around 80% volume.
I just see your say all the up procrastinate. I've been working hard these days, homie, I assassinate. Yeah, oh, homie, I assassinate. You can check my stats, yeah, you can check my resume. I see y'all sitting down, all the up procrastinate. I've been working hard these days, homie, I assassinate. Yeah, oh, homie, I assassinate. You can check my stats, yeah, you can check my resume. Cause I come like a killer, I build it up and getting iller. I'm the first time just getting realer. Yeah, that's what I do when I build my pillars. Build my castle, build my house. Yeah, I really built this town, so I gotta strike them. Yeah, I gotta rap and bring them down. Yeah, I really can't bring this, man, I really can't rap these balls, man, I just gotta win this. Man, I'm up in this ring right now, I'ma take them out, you can be the witness. I get this, up on this level, I've been elevating it. Y'all been wrong, being lazy, elevating, going up. Well, I've been walking up the stairs. This life is really crazy and it sure as hell ain't fair. But that is all okay, I'ma tell them I don't care. I just gotta keep them shuffling, I just gotta be the man that's really gonna do it, that is really gonna make it. Man, I feel this gravitation in my body, man, I do it for my people now, yeah, for my nation, for my soul, and for my legacy. Cause I'm on my path and I be coming for my destiny.
Motion Boom, JBL Charge 5, Sony XB43. Just to point out yet again the difference in the bass on the Motion Boom. We take the bass peak, 60 hertz, minus 20 is 6 decibels up on the JBL Charge 5, 5 decibels up on Sony XB43. In terms of LUFS, 30 to 65 hertz. So basically all that deep bass, minus 27 is 8 decibels up on the Charge 5, 7 decibels up on the XB43. So it's a league of its own, the Motion Boom, for deep, genuine bass. If you look at 40 hertz, it's not even rolled off. Minus 34 is 15 decibels up on the JBL Charge 5. You're not going to hear 40 hertz on the JBL Charge 5. 9 decibels up on the Sony XB43. You're going to struggle to hear any sense of that deep bass on the Sony XB43. Notice also, Sony XB43 has a steep roll-off at the high end, whereas the JBL Charge 5, really strong, has a lot of clarity. It's quite noticeable, the difference at that high end. And even the Motion Boom, with my custom settings, is still pretty strong, right up to 16 kilohertz. You can see now, by comparison, the JBL Charge 5, it's much more compressed. It's not that bass heavy. The mids are far more prominent than you were going to get on the Motion Boom, which is a bass heavy sound, but it's still quite a linear slant. And then the Sony XB43, it really isn't that linear. No sense of a linear slope. Mids are pushed. Yes, I did push it in custom EQ, but you have to if you want to get some clarity out of it because it's mids recessed in default mode. And really, despite its size and weight, it's an upper bass heavy speaker. Minus 27, 2 decibels up for upper bass on the Charge 5. Same thing against the Motion Boom. But these volumes, even minus 28 for mid bass, is already losing out to the Motion Boom by 2 decibels. There's only one world champion. There's only one pound for pound world champion in my life. And that is the Soundcore Motion Boom. And this 80% volume test for me really shows you why. It's doing everything that I'm going to be asking it. It's giving me true deep bass. Deep enough bass that when you don't have that deep bass, it's almost like listening to a different track. Still got a nice stereo. On axis, still has a nice stereo separation. It's immersive. It's a clear, open sound. It's not the greatest in terms of dispersion, but as far as on-axis listening goes, it's doing everything I want. And when I tell you it's 80 quid, that's astonishing value. JBL Charge 5, by comparison, you can hear the absolute lack of deep bass when against a speaker like that. But I would say you can still hear its icy clear nature. To me, that's overall, when I talk about this speaker, it's going to be icy, ultra clear, aggressive, lean, clean. It's never going to be a warm sounding speaker, but it's going to be an in-your-face, nice, powerful, punchy listen. But at these volumes, it can't hold its own, as you would expect, given its size, against already a champion in terms of that deep bass in the Motion Boom. Now, Sony XB43. Why does it exist? Well, as I said, it exists probably in your life if you buy it because you want a big soundstage, or you just want something you can turn on and you know it's not going to let you down. It's always going to sound nice and pleasant, but it's not going to ever excel and take you to different levels in your enjoyment of your music, because as you can hear, despite its size and weight, the deep bass is not there, simply missing compared to the Motion Boom. The clarity is not there compared to the JBL Charge 5. And I can't get, just like the Sony XB43, I still get a sense of a veiled nature. Is it to do with the mesh that they use? I don't know. But as pleasant as both of those speakers are, I do find something veiled about them. I do enjoy listening to this speaker, I have to say. It's very safe. But if I really want to get some excitement in my life, I'm never going to pick up the Sony XB43. So, ultimately, you want a party. How loud do they go? How much bass can I get out of this thing? Can I really annoy my neighbours with it?
Original, coming to your life like a visual and digital. Futuristic and we individual, not typical. When we bring the vibe, it's reciprocal. Take it to another level, then we reach the pinnacle. Original, coming to your life like a visual and digital. Futuristic and we individual, not typical. When we bring the vibe, it's reciprocal. Take it to another level, then we reach the pinnacle. Yo, HAJDE, HAJDE, HAJDE. 1, 2, 3, let's go. Let's go! Everybody put your hands up. Get out your seat and stand up. Start to dance, throw hands up. Celebrate, let's go! Original, coming to your life like a visual and digital. Futuristic and we individual, not typical. When we bring the vibe, it's reciprocal. Take it to another level, then we reach the pinnacle. Original, coming to your life like a visual and digital. Futuristic and we individual, not typical. When we bring the vibe, it's reciprocal. Take it to another level, then we reach the pinnacle. Yo! HAJDE, HAJDE, HAJDE. 1, 2, 3, let's go. HAJDE, HAJDE, jump up, HAJDE, let's go. HAJDE, HAJDE, hands up, HAJDE, let's go.
So the Soundcore Motion Boom, it's the loudest, but only by a teeny bit, almost identical in measurements, -15 for loudness, 102 for peak. That's rounded up. I can tell you it's a fractional advantage overall to the Motion Boom. But look at the frequency analysis. You can see it's looking quite different. So we still have a steep drop off at the high end, rubbing it up a bit of clarity. You can see it's upper bass, mid bass, heavy. It's peaked there around 85 Hertz. It's almost up with its peak at around 55 Hertz. Look at the Motion Boom. Far more dynamic in terms of that bass. But look at the Motion Boom. It's more about that deep bass. It's not pushing the upper bass. Even in default mode, it wouldn't push that upper bass. And it's hitting notes low down the others can only dream about. -26, -21 at 55 Hertz. 6 decibels up on the XB43. 10 decibels up on the JBL Charge 5. 30 to 200 Hertz. So even if we average out the whole of the bass, deep bass, mid bass, upper bass, the total of bass available, -26 for the Motion Boom, still up on the XB43 despite its upper bass push, and 5 dB up on the JBL Charge 5. It's impressive because it's doing that with deep bass. It could go even louder if it wasn't bothering with the deep bass and it was just using upper bass, mid bass kick. So for a still listenable, enjoyable sound at maximum volume, there's only one speaker here. It's the Motion Boom. Can you spot the JBL Charge 5? No, you can't. It's now hidden. You got the maximum volumes. It's now overshadowed, as I expect. And as I said, the problem for this speaker, for me, is the price. JBL must know their fan base and know that people are going to pay well over the odds for a speaker because it's got this massive improvement in the JBL logo that lights up, goes red, orange as you move it to the side. And everybody knows you've got a JBL speaker, but £160, bigger than the Denon 250 BT, would be an interesting video, I guess, to do it against that speaker. But it does play, maybe it's one of the best sounding speakers I've heard at low volume, so I will give it that. And I'm sure it will come down in price at some point, but it can't hold up against these speakers. You did ask for this, and maybe it came as a surprise to you, but it's simply not in the same league in terms of volume, even though on paper 40 watts. It doesn't have the LEDs either of the Sony XB43. In terms of the XB43 against the Motion Plus, against the Motion Boom, well, on paper about the same volumes, but it is a tad louder. Tad, you're not really going to notice that difference on the Motion Boom, but what you will notice is the lack of the deep bass. So it's doing it in terms of upper bass. It's more impressive to go loud while retaining deep bass because it chews up more of your amp, and that's why most of these speakers the manufacturers do not choose to go for deep bass. In fact, they limit deep bass. Hello, 80%, no more bass, because it can go louder by pushing the mids and the highs rather than wasting a wattage on the bass. In fact, the power to drive below 300 Hertz is the same power as it takes to drive 300 Hertz and above, which is quite something when you think about it. So, overall, what's my takeaway? Well, to me, there's nothing shocking here. I knew it wasn't going to hold up, but I knew it's actually the most expensive speaker on the table. Does it have a place? Yes. If I'm listening now at low volumes, it's going to be a speaker I think about picking up. But if I want to party out, or I want something with some immersion, because it is a narrow soundstage, or a narrow sound. It isn't really a soundstage. It is a mono speaker, but it does remain icy clear. For some, it may be a bit shrill, but that has improved. It was quite a harsh sounding speaker when I first got it, and each time I've picked it up, it sounded nicer and less harsh. Could be my ears adjusting to it. However, I do think there's been some break-in. I think it's improved with break-in. The Motion Boom cannot at this point be challenged in terms of price, sound, and that deep bass. Plays down to 40 Hertz without rolling off. That's 40 Hertz. It's all right. As I said, test tones is all well and good. Someone plays a test tone and you see it light up and, oh, blimey, it's playing. It's not. If you don't hear it in an actual track, it's completely meaningless. You will hear 40 Hertz. You will hear deep bass with the speaker. And playing down to 40 Hertz means you will hear things in your music that you will simply not hear on these other speakers that can't go below 50 Hertz. It will simply sound different. XB43, well, it's a big heavy speaker, and if you want a big sound and a safe sound, and it's never going to sound terrible, Sony XB43 could be for you. Just note, it's never going to play deep bass. It's never going to sound ultra clear. It's never going to offend. It's not going to offend anybody. Much like the XB33 to me, and maybe that's why they sound like that. Maybe that's exactly what they've targeted. Knowing it's never going to offend anyone, and it's a very safe sound. But I wouldn't want to party to that. I could party to that, and you know, I could listen at low volumes without annoying the neighbours and getting a really enjoyable sound from the JBL Charge 5. I think that pretty much sums up this particular comparison. Hope you got something out of my video here, and I thank you for watching.